signed up for it.
You know what I'm saying?
So I can't.
Oh.
Yeah.
I got the knowledge.
Thank you. It's a lot.
Well, you know what I mean.
And we have the employee
I just submitted the two.
Which is separate.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for coming. We are going to begin by just introducing ourselves because we have some people who weren't here at the last meeting. Trish Cawley, Child Nutrition Services, co-chair of the committee.
Good afternoon, Rob Mezzanotte, Assistant Superintendent.
Colleen Schnack, school nurse at Stony Lane Elementary and nurse coordinator for the district.
Susanna Tingley, parent. Pam Panero, parent.
Karen Wetherill, Rhode Island Healthy Schools Coalition.
Debbie LaCasco, co-chair.
Lydia Hanhart, Office of Family Learning. Jackie DiLorenzo, Early Childhood Supervisor at Fishing Cove.
Sherry Kennedy, parent and PTO president at Forest Park Elementary.
And we're going to start today's meeting with an update from Karen Wetherill with the Rhode Island Healthy School Coalition.
Oh, gosh, okay.
Didn't you read your agenda?
Just, well,
There's a lot.
yeah, I'm just trying to think what updates are. I did want to ask you, the district, and you, Trish, about the, because the deadline for the Get the Foam Out grant with RIDE, so maybe you have an update on that for those that may not be aware. January 2025, there's a law that styrofoam will no longer be able to be used. This just isn't in schools. This would be if you're getting takeout from restaurants. No more styrofoam, obviously, much an improvement for the environment. So, but for schools, that can be an issue for schools that don't have dishwashers, that have been relying on styrofoam. And I didn't know about here, so RIDE is stepping up, trying to assist schools to make that transition. But what's also great about it is, as part of that, they are allowing the grant request to also include expenses around starting a composting program in schools. And I know that there's been some interest here. Sherry had come to, we had our annual breakfast years ago where we showcased the work of the Rhode Island School recycling program that have worked with like a dozen schools so far and starting up mostly elementaries because if people aren't aware, a lot of times when you're asked, where do you think there's more food waste? And the answer is the elementary schools by far. Then at the high school there actually isn't much waste. So that's where they like to start, is elementary school. And plus, in addition to actually sorting in the cafeteria, and what they do is help set up that program, but educating the kids and the adults in the schools too on why and how to set it up. So there is a lot of education around it in addition to pulling out a lot of that waste, which the goal is to reduce the trash that's going out, that you don't have that much more trash now, so that the fees then get reduced. I was just in a meeting with Little Compton. There were one school, small little K through 8 school, as I was driving here, and they started a program, and they are doing it themselves, but and the principal said they have one little half bag of trash now out of the cafeteria instead of like they used to have 3 huge trash bags. So just one example. Anyway, I just wondered if there was an update on that and if there were any plans in the district.
Yes, we are applying for the grant for every single school that we have.
Wow.
And part of the reason why it does have to do with free and reduce and participation. RIDE has their own formula, but we're not going to get it unless we put in an application for every school. And also, it's 50-50 for Child Nutrition Services. We'll be matching whatever that grant is, so it just makes our money go further. And also, an interesting thing about this grant is it's unusual to have, like, the infrastructure, plumbing and things like that aren't usually covered through school nutrition funds because they're considered the building. And this is an exception for the grants that we do get to qualify for. And so we are going for new dish machines in the 2 middle schools because we're gonna get so much bang for our buck. And then we have a plan for the Wickford Middle, and then we have an elementary plan. And Sherry Kennedy has been working on the Forest Park application, and Sherry,
Well,
any?
Well, I shouldn't say, I actually passed it on to
That's
another
okay.
parent, Holly Moran, but, this is the first year Forest Park has had a student council, and the student council, prior to me finding out about this, put this whole healthy eating presentation together. They presented it to the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, also the PTO, and so they're all working on it, and so hopefully getting so they can compost and recycling at Forest Park. So it's great, because to be honest, it's like these 4th and 5th grade kids that put this awesome presentation together and are now helping to see how it's gonna come to fruition. So,
I know, and I love it when someone that age group gets involved, because often it's like a senior who shows up at my door and I'm like, oh. So this is great. It's interesting. One of the pieces that I found interesting, which everyone really wouldn't think about, is the #1 protein being consumed not only in North Kingstown but in the country is cheese. And people are always thinking, that it's burgers and nuggets, but cheese in various forms. And we're working with a grant where we have our cheese coming in from Narragansett Creamery. So it's good for the economy, it's good for the farmers, it's good for the kids. So I look forward to meeting with them so that we can go over the slides with them.
I think they're gonna push for having a 4th option that's vegetarian, but it's great, and they've actually been meeting outside of school, meeting after school to help with all this stuff with the grant. And
Yes.
Trish has been good, coordinating with what they have to do, so, yeah, they're future leaders of, the school department. Yeah.
So-
And isn't that great? They feel because as you had told me at the last meeting, this was before you even knew about the
Yeah,
grant
they'd
and the
already
kids. So they
had
feel
that-
like they've been heard, right?
Yes.
That you learn that skill, that if you can articulate a need and that you'll be part of the solution, that people will, and they're gonna be supported.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's
so I think they're all
interesting.
excited because of that too, right, because they put it together, and I don't know if they anticipated it was gonna.
And it's also interesting too, because if I do have student interaction in elementary school and they suggest something that is viable, I am like, you watch, you're gonna see that on that menu next month. And then I'll just tell my own staff, make sure so-and-so sees that we listened for when it does happen. Back to you, Karen.
Good, okay. A second thing, I wanted to just give an update on the Healthy School Meals for All legislation that's making its way through the State House right now, and thank you to Trish once again. Last year she did, and she came out this year at the House hearing, so there has been for the House bill a hearing, and was with a number of other advocates, but I think hearing from you, Trish, that are in these cafeterias every day, and then just see sort of that it's just not equitable, and how we really want, that it's not, the cafeteria is the only place where public school isn't equitable for all kids. So a few things, I know it did go out, I had sent an email, so I just wanted to mention a few things here that what was happening. So the Senate hearing has not been posted yet. That will be posted soon, because they have to be identical bills, for those, if you remember how a bill becomes a law. So they have to go through both those houses and then get voted on. And we had an advocacy day at the State House last week, and media was there, and a number of other advocates speaking. And even though the night before, the governor had announced a last-minute press conference about the Washington Bridge, which was exactly at the same time, we still had well over a dozen or so. I thought, oh gosh, great, everyone's gonna be there. And being an East Bay resident, I understand this is gonna be really hard the next 3 years, which is why it takes me so long to get everywhere now. But it was a great crowd, and people are starting to learn more. For those who don't have it, I have some just flyers that I can hand out. But there is now a website that people can use to get information, and then if you wanted to send support to your legislator. And then just the last thing is, and I don't remember if last year North Kingston did it, but several districts had been asking, because they wanted to write resolutions, either the school committee or the district in support of it. And so as part of that email, I did share a template that the American Heart Association has, that we are one of 25 states that are, that has bills, reviewing bills this session. And so the Heart Association is a big advocate nationwide. So I did include that.
I will look for it.
Okay.
We did do it last year.
Okay,
The school
so I
committee
can,
did it,
all right,
so
I'll
make sure
resend
I
that to
look-
you.
Okay, thank you.
If that's of interest,
Absolutely.
so. And then, just a few other things, these were in our e-newsletter, so I just would encourage anyone to sign up for it individually. I know many get it, but, we now have, there's a national organization called Be Real, and it's really focused on body confidence. And what we're learning about now is young people have become very obsessed with appearance, are very judgmental of their own body, have stress, and there's a lot of disordered eating behaviors because of that. And all of the research shows that it actually happens really, really young. And so what this organization is doing, Be Real, is just to teach people that bodies come in different shapes and sizes and can be healthy, and to have confidence in who you are and what your body can do, as opposed to focusing on how your body looks. And so there were several districts that had been talking about some of these concerns around a growing number of cases of students with disordered eating. And I got connected with this organization, and a Rhode Island registered dietitian who has an expertise in this has now become what's called a Be Real ambassador. And so she's available even to go out for parent groups or for staff. The Be Real organization does have free lesson plans for high school that actually, when they came out, they came to our annual breakfast and then carried on after to go up to the Harvard School of Public Health, because they're working with them on, it is evidence-based, they've done research on it. So it is an evidence-based curriculum, lesson plan, so to speak. So that's available for free. But I just wanted to mention it because I know a lot of times they're looking for speakers, for parents, or even for school groups, and this is something I just wanted to point out, because with social media today, and again, just the mental health, we know a lot of it really is about kids really learning to feel more confident in their own skin, so.
Karen, would that Be Real ambassador, like contact information, be something we could have?
Yes, absolutely, I will forward it to you.
Thank you. I can share that out with like building principals.
Okay, yeah,
and see about
terrific.
PTOs maybe, or
Exactly, yeah. And then I'll just, the final thing, again, for those, I've mentioned it here, but who have been to our breakfast, this past October, we talked about it, and it's an app called Right to Know that we have developed in conjunction with the Rhode Island Department of Health. And it's an app on youth, so the target ages are 14 to 21, kind of high school is the sweet spot, but on sexual and reproductive health. And we had formed an advisory group of clinicians, of health educators, public health officials, youth, including youth too, to develop this so that it is youth-friendly, but has medically accurate, trustworthy, honest information. So it's, again, the youth helped to come up with the logo and the name, Right to Know, even information about services too, where services are available in the state. And the idea in the school setting, we're going to be, when we're ready to beta test it now, and then we'll be disseminating and promoting it in community setting, clinical settings, but also schools. We hear from many health educators, either they don't have time, and we've gone through here in this committee, reviewing the content for the health curriculum. There's just a lot of information to share that may not be comfortable with it or in the classroom. It's just a resource available to families, to parents, to young people themselves. If they have a question, and to get that. So just wanted to give an update on that. And once it's launched, I'll provide more
Thank you.
information at that time.
4 good updates.
Yeah,
Big
okay.
ones. Thank you. And we had, a couple of school committee meetings ago, we had the South County Prevention do a presentation. And Susanna, I know you talked about the smoking and the vaping. Last year it's in our minutes, this year it's in our minutes, and now it's coming to be. Thank you for that, and thank you for your patience. And I asked the coalition to come forward and give us some updates on what they do and what resources we have available. Heidi?
Great, thank you. Appreciate having been invited. I just want to introduce who else is with me today. So this is Natalie Kimmerline. She is one of our grant managers for our Health Disparities Grant, working specifically with LGBTQ youth and really focusing on vaping. And Kayla Van Gordon, who some of you might actually recognize. She is a teacher in the district, but she is also the North Kingstown coordinator. So Kathy Yeager had retired. I'm sure many of you know Kathy Yeager. So Kayla is now in that position. So, yeah, I mean, what would you like to start with? There's so much that we could discuss. We can really kind of talk about some of the strategies that we're already working on throughout South County and in North Kingstown. What's going on already in your schools?
Well, I know that they have, these strategies. Do you use these strategies for the tobacco-free campus? Is that anything that you're?
So we focus more on the Rhode Island model policy, which I see that you have right
Yes.
there, which is
Yeah.
wonderful. We work closely with Department of Health and Rhode Island DHDDH. So part of the model policy, it includes many different parts, and I know North Kingstown is very well versed in signage. So that's one of the biggest things, and we can have signage on all of your campuses, all of your buildings, so that really the first thing that parents and students are seeing when they come in the buildings, that vaping is not allowed. Nicotine, tobacco is not allowed in your schools. So that's something I think, with Kathy Yeager, we've worked, but, signs fall, they come down, they get damaged. Certainly, if you needed more signage for any of the buildings, we would be more than happy to get that for you.
I will find out about that.
Yeah, definitely.
Because you're absolutely right. Every time summer comes, when we come back, we're like, wait a minute,
Right.
it was here.
Right, exactly.
Okay, good to know.
Exactly. So then, also just to tell you, in front of you, we had a very large vaping conference last week. I'm not sure, I can't remember who from North Kingstown actually came. We had over 200 people from around the state who joined us. So that's what's in front of you. Those are the bags that we gave out, and there's lots of great resources that we had sent out to all the educators in Rhode Island. But one of the things that we really were stressing is a preventative program within the schools. We really like Catch My Breath. It's an evidence-based program. It can be done in multiple grades. I believe it goes K through, I have to check. Yeah, K through 12. Yeah. And feel free to jump in at any point. Yeah. So I am from South Kingstown. I have worked with Mr. Mezzanotte very closely. I've also worked with the middle schools. We were doing Catch My Breath in the middle schools. It's about 4 different classroom sessions. It's not terribly long as far as an evidence-based program goes. And it's very effective. I think the one thing we probably want to stress is as early as you can get that education out to these kiddos, they're not too young. They know what all of this is. You ask any 9, 10-year-old, what do you think of smoking? Oh, that's disgusting. I would never smoke. What do you think of vaping? Oh, isn't that just water? It's nothing. It's not a big deal. So even our young kids are seeing that. And one of the things we did at the conference is we really talked about the social media effect that these kids are exposed to on a daily basis whenever they're getting on social media platforms. And they're, you know, you and I aren't getting these ads. We're not the ones targeted. But trust me, these younger, you know, high elementary, middle school kids, they're being targeted all the time. They're seeing the influencers all the time, talking about these brands, talking about, you know, what they like about them, doing tricks, all sorts of things. So as early as we can start that prevention education in the classroom, that's wonderful. Anything you want to add to that? Prevention?
Well, yeah, prevention is our bread and butter. Prevention Coalition is really kind of the name of the game, but you want me to move into kind of in depth?
Yeah, you want to talk about that?
So as I'm sure we all know, because vaping is a daily challenge for schools and for teenagers, you have to meet kids too who are already using. So we do have highlighted in the packets a few different resources, one of which is In Depth, which is already being implemented in North Kingstown High School by Anne Finley, the student assistance counselor, which is an alternative to suspension program. So instead of being suspended from school for a nicotine or tobacco violation, they can opt into sessions with the student assistance counselor where they really get a chance to reflect, learn, and maybe move toward a goal of quitting. Again, last week when we had our conference, we had the student assistance counselor from Cheraho speak to her experience implementing In Depth, and really just glowing reviews from the students who went through the program, saying things like, if I had been suspended, I would still be using. Me and my friend decided to quit together, and now we've been sober for 3 months. You know, just saying like, getting caught was actually the best thing that ever happened to me. You know, it's an opportunity when a student may have a violation and it gets caught, it comes to, you know, administrative detention. I think we especially like to see that as an opportunity to then say, okay, let's educate, intervene, and support the student. And then another thing I'll highlight in there is My Life, My Quit. My Life, My Quit is a free quit line that's dedicated for youth in the state of Rhode Island, and other states use it as well, but it's a very easy tool. Kids can text into it, they can go to the website, they can call if kids want to call, which I don't know if they want to make phone calls, but you know, that's an option too. And that is, you know, it's a coach cessation program, it's free for students, so really what we like to promote too is having in bathrooms, hallways, classrooms, any place you can case the My Life, My Quit number, the text line to refer students to, the better, because it's something where you're probably not going to come up to a teacher or a counselor and say, hey, I'm looking to quit, how do I do that? But if they maybe see a poster in a bathroom and they think, you know, I really do want to quit, they can make that decision for themselves, and we know that it's something that when they feel like they're not being watched, it's something they're more likely to engage with. So yeah, really, we try to highlight kind of talking about things from, you know, each level of prevention. The primary prevention of probably having the goal, which is our favorite thing, maybe not picking up the e-cigarette in the first place. That's the Catch My Breath, primary prevention, health class work. And that's a lot of the work that the North Kingstown Coalition does. That's the work that we support. And then as you move into students, you know, secondary prevention is dealing with students who are already finding themselves struggling with the issue, and then quitting is, you know, all that. So,
Right. And the My Life, My Quit, we just recently, probably 2 months ago, gave A.M. Finley and the 2 student assistance counselors at Whitford and Davisville a whole slew of new items for bathrooms, posters, stickers, all sorts of things so that they could have those in the schools. And just to tell you a little about the In-Depth program, we received this grant through the Department of Health on health disparities. So this was part of a pilot program to do in-depth in 5 of the high schools in South County. And Eric Anderson was really very instrumental in helping us with this. Last year we were trying to just get it, you know, out and, you know, get the schools to utilize it. This year we're actually collecting some really good data that we'll have by June on the students within South County that have taken it. So
So we currently using this?
yes, you do. Yep.
That's good to know.
So, from what I understand, is when a student is either caught for a violation, the parent is given a choice whether their child should go through this educational program or an in-school suspension.
A
So-
choice?
It's a parental choice,
Okay.
yes. And the majority of parental choices are the educational program. There's really great success. We gave you some literature on in-depth. We have about nationwide, this is from the American Lung Association, about 60% of the kids who go through this program then want to go on to a cessation program. So it's not a cessation program, but then they want to move on, so to learn more about quitting. So that's big. You know, you have to think, these kids, we just did Screenagers, did a documentary virtual showing last night. And we had a parent talking about, you know, their child, and their child was at a party and someone else, you know, ran into the bathroom, they were embarrassed that they were vaping. You know, it's really embarrassing and shameful for some of these kids because they don't want to keep doing this. They're addicted now. So we're really trying to give them that alternative. Suspension isn't going to help the problem. We need to now educate them. What are the triggers? Why are you doing this? And figure out like how they can quit.
Yeah, a question, you mentioned like it's a parental choice, but do you find, I've heard in other communities that there's some parent education needed? Because sometimes the adults themselves think they don't understand how much nicotine and how it can be, yeah, so.
So we're actually, so we take it from all, you know, there's environmental strategies that go into this, where we're, you know, Kayla is going to local package stores and tobacco retailers right now, and we're gonna be doing compliance checks with them. So that's the environmental part. Then we're talking the community part, we're talking education for parents. We're actually at Charahoe on Saturday they have a event called Artisy, and we have a tables that we're setting up with every chemical that is in a vape, showing them actually where that chemical comes from. So there's acetone, we're showing them it's nail polish remover. There's formaldehyde. We've got, you know, the proverbial jug with the fish, with the frog in it, you know, so we're trying to do that parent education. But you know what's really difficult is as soon as you get that cohort of parents educated, they grow up and then you're on to the next set. So it's just that constant battle of trying to educate the community. But we're trying. That's what
It
we
can be
do.
done, it was done with,
Yes.
with
tobacco.
tobacco.
It was done with tobacco.
Yes.
So, you know, it's a lot of money behind it.
Yeah.
As in
Yeah,
tobacco.
that's the- yeah.
Too bad
Yeah.
that when we finally figured out the tobacco thing, that this came up right behind it.
Yeah, well, because they figured it out, right?
They
It's
figured
like
it
there's so
out.
much
Yeah.
money
Someone
behind these
else.
products and marketing and.
Just catch my breath before classroom, do we do that in North Kingstown?
What is it?
The primary
Catch my
prevention.
breath, the classroom sessions you're.
Kayla, are we doing that?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
We don't have that implemented.
How
Kayla,
big
what-
of a problem is it here? Does anyone know, like at the high school in the yeah,
It's
Yeah.
Big problem
prevalent.
everywhere.
big, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Well,
Yep.
I mean, I hear you,
Yeah.
some, yeah.
It's been a big I've worked in a few high schools, it's been a big problem at all.
And the middle schools too.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's why I liked how you said, my kids are in fifth grade and they
Yeah.
don't have phones, but I am shocked how many fourth and fifth graders have phones. And they know all these influencers, and like you were saying, like, they are probably already being exposed at that
100%.
young age. Not, you know, I don't think, not realizing that they have a phone, thinking so they can call you, but, you know. So I just thought that was interesting, even for younger kids, before they get to the middle school.
Kayla, was there anything you wanted to add?
Just echoing what these
Yeah.
two had said, I'm a little bit newer to the position. I started a little less than a year ago. I am also a teacher, so I see from an upper elementary school perspective how much these students are exposed to vaping or other marketing. I just took a training, Media Detective, which I'm hoping to implement either within the schools or through the rec department. And it's all about how alcohol and tobacco products are marketed towards young individuals as young as 3rd grade. Just the different marketing strategies that things like blue e-cigarettes or even different alcohol brands will use to catch the attention of a young child or a middle school or high school aged individual, and how growing up without even realizing these students are watching TV and seeing these commercials of someone drinking a Budweiser and having the time of their life at a football game. And so in their mind, that child has, without even knowing, made the connection that, well, if I drink Budweiser, I'm gonna have more fun at my sporting events. And they could be as young as 4th grade watching the Super Bowl with their parents. So just educating as young as possible with these students that unfortunately these companies aren't very cognizant of their health, and allowing them the opportunity to become aware of the negative effects these products have on their health. And I've found within other districts of doing education about this type of topic or other programs that I've witnessed, a lot of students, most of them I would say, when they're educated on the negative health benefits that vaping or drinking has on their body, they can come to the decision on their own. It's just making sure that they have that information readily available to decide not to pick up the vape at all, or what to do if for some reason they have gotten into that situation.
And the companies are definitely targeting the younger students,
Mm-hmm.
or the younger people. When you're making a vape that's bubble gum flavored, it's definitely geared towards that elementary school. And I myself, as a medical person, went into a vaping store, and this was in New Jersey, and played stupid and wanted to find out what it was all about. They actually have mouthpieces that you can change so you can try the different flavors while you're there. There had to be at least 10 kids who came in on their bicycle to taste some of the different products. And the guy was like, "Oh, you're back again?" So they're just using the samples as their source more so than bringing a vape home. But they have crazy flavors.
There are over 7,000 flavors.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And even when I was in high school, I remember I went through North Kingstown and I did DARE. And my whole grade level grew up and we would never, ever, ever touch a cigarette. But right around the time that the kids in high school, when I was in high school, turned 18, was when Juul e-cigarettes came out. And it was interesting, even to this day, how many of my peers still use those things because it was marketed towards our age group, all the flavors they put out, and now I graduated high school 6 years ago, and I still have a lot of classmates that are addicted to the nicotine and those substances. And they really, I don't think, knew what they were picking up at that point. And they are conscious of that now, of I wish I never went to that gas station when I turned 18 and picked this up, because I didn't know what this was gonna do to my body and my health and how I could be just as addicted to this as a cigarette.
Nicotine addiction, it's been medically proven, is harder to break than even heroin addictions are. So if they're grabbing them in the grammar school, they now have a lifetime client who's gonna buy those products.
Yeah, a couple of, really good things that have happened is number one, the selling age is now 21. So that just changed right around COVID. So it didn't get a lot of attention. Nationally, it happened in 2019, and then Rhode Island in late 2020, which is great. We had to do a lot of education with retailers because some of them did not know. The other thing, I just lost my train of thought. I'm gonna make two spectacular points and I forgot it.
I'm reading your mind and thinking you're probably thinking about the flavor ban.
Yes, thank you.
You're good. I've known Heidi for a really long time, actually,
Yeah.
so, yeah. We just think in one brain. But, the flavoring piece is something that's absolutely a major concern. About 9 out of 10 youth across the nation who use e-cigarettes, not surprisingly, use flavored e-cigarettes, because they're marketed to them. And most kids who pick up an e-cigarette are picking up a flavored e-cigarette. In the state of Rhode Island, it is not legal to sell flavored e-cigarettes.
But
If you go into any store, you see them sold, and that's because of some kind of upper level policy
Weird exception to the rule.
loopholes
Yeah.
and regulation issues where, yes, it's illegal, but there's no enforcement body to enforce these sale restrictions. So, yeah, it's, you throw your hands up and you say,
Really?
okay, well, yeah. So there's some movement right now happening at the state level to try and move regulation of e-cigarettes out of the Department of Health into the Department of Revenue. It's like a whole thing.
Right.
But, yeah, so that is a positive thing, that Rhode Island does have on the books
Yeah.
a flavor ban,
You know what I
despite
was
the
gonna
fact
say
it's
also?
not.
The tax parity.
Yes.
So, believe it or not, right now on a package of cigarettes, it's $4.25. They are hoping for the taxes to go up. It's in the governor's budget to $4.50. There is no taxes on any vaping products. So they are also hoping that that tax will be put in, and that's gonna definitely help. I mean, you know, we find every time the taxes go up by a quarter, sales go down.
What
So-
about internet sales though too? I always heard that that was a way around,
It
that
is.
kids can purchase them, yeah. And that the other
It
thing,
is.
that when that law first passed, and there probably was a little bit more acknowledgement that you weren't supposed to be selling it. I know that in other communities, when they would, like you all doing great work, would go in to do those, you know, scans of sites. They might not be out, but if any young person asked, they go in the back and
Correct.
put them out. So they just don't have them on.
Exactly, and that's exactly, you know, the part of the enforcement issue that
Yeah.
Natalie was talking
Yeah.
about. I mean, there's just not enough capacity for police officers and the police departments to go, and it's so low on there.
Well, that's why education young. And I will say, I have heard, so that the research is showing now that a lot of those, like DARE programs, when it were not effective, and that even telling people developmentally at the age like middle school and even high school, telling them only about the health impacts. They can't really process that I can get lung cancer when I'm older. And what's more effective is what you were saying about the media. And that being told you're being taken advantage of, you're being manipulated,
Right.
they're trying to get your money, is a more effective way of getting them to
Correct.
pay attention and to.
And everything we do use is an evidence-based program,
Yeah.
so everything that we're talking about. One of the other things that we also do, that I'll put a little plug in for, is in addition to the Media Detective, we started with a program called Media Ready. And that was really for 6th to 8th grade students. And it's the same concept, but just slightly more mature in the content. Natalie's a trainer in that, some of our other staff are trainers in that. We just actually, you know, give a little plug, Narragansett actually gave us, I mean, it's a tough, you know, sell, but they gave us 10 hours in a week, and we went in and taught the entire freshman class. We went up to the freshman grade. We're gonna be doing it for the 8th grade in Narragansett in a few months. So we were so successful with this that we went into the 3rd through 5th grade Media Detective, because I think it's really gonna be, and there's a parent component also to it.
And
It's also
sorry.
10 hours.
Yes, I ran the Media Ready program. I work with the rec department as well. We did a session of it during one of my summer camps, and it is a really engaging program. We did it over the course of a week, and the students are able to see how they're being manipulated in a way. And I think anyone that deals with kids in any realm knows telling a child not to do something sometimes makes them want to do it more. So rather educating them about it, or even showing them tools in order to know that they're being targeted in this way. A lot of the middle school kids were really shocked with how closely they were being targeted, how they had already been, I guess, manipulated by these companies. And then the end project for the Media Ready is they create a counter ad. So then also working with advertising, other communication strategies. If we had more time, we were gonna allow them to bring in a digital component too. So the programs are really great because they're teaching the students about the ad targeting, but they're also able to use other skills, presentation, communication, marketing, and different computer skills. So it has a lot of benefits to it. It's a well-designed curriculum.
Kayla, I feel very fortunate that you're here in North Kingstown.
Oh,
High,
thank you.
wide, and deep with prevention, teaching, elementary, and the recreation program.
I grew up here, so
Yes, that's.
I felt very fortunate to grow up here, and my siblings went through school here, and I went and taught in Providence for a little while, and that made me feel even more lucky for where I grew up. But I do like to work as closely as I can, and I do have my feet in a couple realms, but thank you.
Thank you
Heidi,
all
with
for
your media
coming.
ready in Narragansett, who did you work, like, I'm just curious for how we can replicate that here, like, who did you work through for that?
So it was Molly Sylvia, who was there, I think she in this district now? Oh, East Greenwich, sorry. So what we did in Narragansett is the first day they did, an in-school field trip. So all the kids, all the freshmen came in, auditorium, did that. Then that was the bulk of the curriculum. And then we went back in and did, I think it was during advisory, because they have a longer advisory period, where then the students worked on, they finished up one more lesson and they worked on counter ads, and then they presented the last day.
So that person you said is, do you know, is she the student assistance counselor there?
No, this was one of the deans.
Yeah,
One
so,
of the deans,
and
okay.
this
At
year we
Narragansett.
worked directly with, the principal of Narragansett, Chris
Yeah.
Fiore. And we went right in, he was able to organize getting the time.
And if that was something we're interested in doing here, I would also be more than happy to help with meetings or scheduling with
Thank you.
middle schools or the high
That'd be
school.
great, Kayla, thank you. And if there's even like any materials that you can send along, we can
Of course.
get that out there. See, I was used to bumping into Heidi in the hallway and we would, you know what I mean, but we don't have that luxury here, so.
And we're also trying to make sure, just going forward, we'll be probably at the fall sports, but getting into the high school as well. I had talked to Dr. Duba about this to make sure that we are presenting in some realm to the high school students, whether it's about vaping, opioids, different ways to keep those athlete bodies performing as well as they can. Again, just making sure these kids are educated on what these substances do to their body.
Do you ever think of going through things like OSNK or like, you know, I mean, like where kids are having sports, but you know, the soccer club in
Ocean States,
Yeah, you know, you like have your, because I feel like that is a way to like also,
mhm.
you know, outside of school, but you know, because they're want to be.
Yes, that's a great idea.
Because I think you just assume because kids are playing sports doesn't mean that they're not, right, doing this other stuff.
And I think that's what I found even prior to coming to North Kingstown in my classrooms is athletes I find are more receptive to this kind of education because you can really pinpoint, well, you're practicing all this time to be this best soccer player. You want to score the goals, you want to be the fastest on your team. Can you do that if your lungs aren't working as well as they're supposed to? So there's an aspect too to personalizing the education where I completely agree, like Ocean State soccer
Or
would be a
like
better.
hockey, or like, you
Yes.
know, yeah, like local.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we're always looking for people for our coalition in North Kingstown, so if anybody was interested.
Yes, we have monthly meetings, they're in the morning. We're looking to do some in-person meetings in the summer. But I am working on flyers and kind of digitizing everything, which I would be more than happy to share with all of you.
Well, thank you so much.
Mhm.
Wow,
Thank
you
you.
really. I learned, that's for sure. I don't want to keep you though.
Oh, that's
So,
okay.
But I
We
appreciate.
love talking about it, so.
I appreciate that, all three of you, yeah, everyone has their own angle at it. Debbie, did you have anything you wanted to contribute regarding our policy versus the state model?
Well,
It's okay, I don't want to like,
well, no, we have already gotten a comment from someone from the public about the state model and how it usurps the rights of the parents, and we have no authority to mandate this and all of that, which I wanted to speak to Dr. Duva about, because I believe that the school does have the right to put in our own disciplinary model, and that it does not need to necessarily ask consent. If a student is smoking on campus, we have a right to take that tobacco from them and tell them, we're gonna have you take an education program. So, my own take on it was I really liked the state program. I
Didn't you
thought it
just
was
say
very
that
inclusive.
it was parent choice though? Didn't you just say that parent choice over, so what is NK's policy as far as parent's choice versus, you know, the in-school suspension? Is that our current practice or policy? Does the parent get
Yes.
notified and
Yes.
have that choice?
That is our current policy. And the majority of them, she said, do go for the education.
So you're saying, I haven't read it in depth, but the Rhode Island model policy takes that choice away?
Yeah, it basically
There's
says
no
that,
suspension.
there's no suspensions, but your child is mandated to do the education. And that was viewed as, it should be my decision.
And I agree personally.
Right.
So, I would always think the parent should have a choice. Personally.
I wondered
I mean,
too-
it just, you
yeah.
know,
I know, but the parents vaping themselves, they're not helping their kid.
I understand, but
Which
it's,
is
they're
like,
still the
maybe
parent.
not in North Kingstown, but I think I used to live in Providence.
Right, and I do
I
think
get,
that-
I get you, but it's still their child, and it's their, you know, it shouldn't be,
I
nothing
think, like
in
you
my
said,
mind
just
should
look
be
at
all or
legal,
nothing.
whether, I think it's just because they were in school using
Yeah,
a nicotine
versus out of
product,
school.
and that's the disciplinary, so it's something just for the school committee.
Suzanne?
to
I was
think
just gonna say,
about.
that was one of my concerns with the policy, is that, I think it should be an option. I think most parents will probably opt for the education over suspension, but I think it should still be a parent's choice.
option.
A parent should be informed.
Yeah,
And I questioned whether, is there an option for the counseling necessarily? Does it have to be an in-school education? I wasn't thrilled with some of the stuff that was listed in this policy. It seemed to get a little political to me, if it's strictly educational, but the language kind of veers a little political, and that's a little concerning to me. If it's strictly education, I'm all for that, and the younger the better. I think if we can get kids thinking about vaping like we do cigarettes, you know, that's what we need to do. But certainly the kids that are addicted, I want them to get help, but I do think the parents need to be involved. I think, can we give them options for an out-of-school counseling as versus the in-school?
So this sounds like we're in process with this policy, and then when we have our June meeting, we will have it on the agenda, once again, with more information.
So it's like the state has one policy and then the town can differ from that.
No, it's like a model
Model
policy,
policy,
yeah.
yeah, so they created it to help districts, but it's not
Districts.
required.
Not
And it just was
Because this is
moving
from
away from a
tobacco-free Rhode
punitive
Island, right?
Mhm.
Not, yeah,
Yeah.
it's from tobacco-free Rhode Island.
But it has
It's like a
the-
suggested.
stamp of a, the
Suggested,
model
okay.
policy. is what
The
it's called.
American Lung Association, I think, even had a different one on their website than us.
I think they all were moving from punitive to,
Right,
Reasonable
but it's kind of how you go about it,
Mhm.
yeah, that I
Mhm.
think.
Yeah.
and if you're gonna take the suspension choice away, but the parent should, it should be clear that the parent is notified that this is happening, and that, you know, if there are choices in the education models, in my mind, that's what should happen. Shouldn't be an automatic to the student without including the parent.
Well, I know, but I think some of it is, there are parents out there, just because my kids were adopted from DCYF, that probably would not make the best decision for the kids. And I know my girls, if they had stayed with their biological mother, would not have made good decisions. And
But we all make, you know, we don't all make perfect decisions
No.
as it is, so.
I know, but I guess that's what I'm saying.
I
is
mean, like-
I think it protects kids who probably aren't being protected by their parents.
But the parents should still be informed, I'm sorry, like, and is it gonna be one choice, or are they gonna have choices?
I think that the parent, but we can, I'm sure this will be reviewed, and like you
Yeah,
said, you're
right.
gonna, but
Yeah.
I think that the parents are always informed. It's just in some districts, the policy is that the choice, they don't do in-school suspension.
Yeah,
the
well, that,
capacity
you know,
to-
and I'm not
yeah.
necessarily for
Yeah.
in-school suspension, I'm just for the parent being involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
That's
not
what
saying
I'm
they
for.
shouldn't know, but I guess what I'm saying is if it's, since it seems there's data that, you know, teaching children why it's probably not the best thing to do versus in-school suspension is probably, it works better for the kids to.
I wanna make sure we're talking about the same thing. I'm hearing about parents being informed and parents having choice. Those are two very different things,
Yeah, I mean,
right?
like-
So parents being informed is 100% should happen absolutely 100% of the time, every time. No exceptions, zero. The choice piece is
is a choice. It's a choice on the part of the schools. The
Right.
schools can choose to give choice. We don't have to give choice. We can choose to give choice when it comes to certain consequences for certain offenses. And so that's an option that can be provided, but won't always be provided. But the informed piece is always provided, must always be provided.
Yeah, I agree. I think parents need to be informed, especially with something of this nature, where first of all, it's illegal for them to have it in the first place. And secondly, I think the parent needs to then sit down with their child and like talk to them about what happened here, why are you using? But I think the choice as to whether we use an in-school counselor or the parent is permitted to use an outside would really be the decision of the school committee as to which avenue. I somewhat lean towards the in-school because we know the program that they'll be given, we know who the counselor is, and, you know, in the community, I don't know what information they're sharing with the child or, you know, again,
Well, I think that seems reasonable as long as the parent would have access to whatever is being taught to their child.
right, to the
I think
information.
that's my big thing, like if
Mhm.
they're gonna do an education program with the child, then the parent should as well have access to what that's gonna include.
Right.
And maybe it'll cause some education for the parent as well.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
Yep.
Good point. All right, now we have the North Kingstown immunization profile. Debbie, it's back to you again.
Yeah, I had gotten a report that came down through the state about the immunizations. So I did some time looking at, first of all, what is required for immunizations in the state. And I'm pretty sure most states require the same stuff. But then when I looked at the school data from our schools, when they're in kindergarten, we're doing great. They're all like 95% or better in compliance. Assuming that 5% are parents who maybe for religious or medical reasons opt their kid out of certain immunizations. And then the next information that came through was for the 7th grade. And Wickford Middle School is like 83%, and Davisville stays pretty good at 90%. But there seems to be a drop from that kindergarten to now where they're in 7th grade. So when I looked at the guidelines for 7th grade, it's really the updated DTaP, first start of the HPV, which I understand is very contentious with some parents that they don't want to do it, and then the meningitis. So I don't know why we're dropping to the 83% there if all of a sudden parents are opting out of that HPV or what specific vaccine it is, because they didn't release that information. And
I
then
think it
we,
would be most likely the HPV.
And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
will say,
Just
just
kind
Oh,
of
cause it's
skew
not
it.
broken out, like
And
it's
it's-
not by
it
each,
doesn't
that it's
say,
just all
it
together.
just says 1%.
Is-
And then do you
that
go into
here?
Aspen and upload it in 7th grade? Is that kind of,
Yeah,
do
and
parents
7
know to do that?
yeah,
Well,
that's what
no,
I was
we're
gonna
the
say,
ones
that
that
it could
do
be, is it a collection
So-
problem?
Yeah, so the nurses actually do all of this work. I mean,
Do they go right to the health department and get access to all the vaccines?
we can, yeah.
Or is it the parent submits it?
Well, the parents will submit, we'll ask for the information, the parents submit, but we do have that state portal called KidsNet that we can access that. For students that come from out of state, it's a little more difficult to get that information. And some is just, you know, lagging behind, like maybe they don't wanna do the HPV in 7th grade, maybe they wanna wait a couple of years.
There's that 1 year, and I think it's 6th grade, because there's a ton of vaccines in that 1 year.
Yeah.
I think it's, and I personally,
Mhm.
like, my child was on the smaller side. I did not feel comfortable doing all the vaccines all at once. So I know that that could be, you know, and then we got them, but we spaced it out differently than than this.
Yeah, in seventh grade, it's the Tdap, the first HPV, and the meningitis.
When was this for? What's the date on this?
So we do this yearly, the state releases data yearly, and we do have a few months to, work with parents and get all the information, so I think there's a deadline of like December of every year that we have to submit data to the state for kindergarten, seventh grade, ninth grade, and 12th grade.
Because definitely the pandemic pushed kids, I mean, that really, we
You
know
almost went,
that
yeah.
there were kids
Right.
that were not on
Yeah, I think we're back on
schedule. You
track
think we're
now,
back on
like
track?
during the
Yeah.
pandemic, they,
Okay.
it definitely, there was a lag, and
Yeah.
I don't even think we had to, I'm not even sure we had to.
And
do
there was a
that
big
follow-up.
push medically
Yeah,
to get
but I
those
think
kids
we're
back on
kind of
track
back on
ASAP.
track, but.
Do you pick up, so just looking, does this seem to you typically what happens, that much of a drop from this?
I'm not, I'd have to ask Wickford Middle about, why they were, lower, that does seem low to me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna,
because-
as a Wickford Middle School parent, I don't think that, I don't get a lot of hey, we need your blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
So you
Just
think it could
saying.
be collection?
It could be a
That's why I was asking,
collection.
I was like, oh, do you
Because I definitely
tell us
haven't
to
gotten
do
that
it, or-
every year, and then one year, I don't remember which, I'm sorry, they all blend, and I have 2 kids at Wickford Middle School, but I definitely don't get it every year, and then all of a sudden I got something, and it was just so it could be a collection issue at that school.
I mean, I think North Kingstown as a whole, our immunization rates are very high. If you do, and you can look, North Kingstown compared to other surrounding communities, and I think we're pretty high.
Actually, the data showed that we were near the bottom
Mm,
for all the schools, and it was pretty
No.
consistent for most of the years.
I'd have to look again, but we're up in, we're in the, I mean, if you look at our kindergarten rates, we're like
Right.
above 95%.
Right.
So, which means we could be 100%, but so if we have, say 65 kindergartners, and we have one child that has a religious exemption, that's gonna pull us right down.
Right.
It's gonna pull us right down.
Right.
So, and that happens. And, in the state of Rhode Island, parents have a right not to vaccinate and to choose, opt for a religious exemption.
Right. They also can get medical exemptions. correct?
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
and then we go to the next page, which was the 8th graders, and we see Davisville now drops to 77%. And Wickford maintains that 80%. Now, in the 8th grade, that second HPV is due. So that might also be, again, that tie-in, because I know even at college, parents were not doing the HPV.
Yeah.
And it actually wasn't even required, it was recommended, but they opted not to do it. Part of it was because it was so new, and part of it is because they tell you that the injection hurts and many of the kids will pass out when they get it, and parents don't wanna do that, and I get that. And then we go to the grade 12, and the high school is pretty good, they're at 86.7%, so there is a catch-up happening. But, I just didn't know why, we were at the bottom of the table that the state put out, and what the big discrepancies were, but I believe it's probably that HPV vaccine, to be honest with you.
In my, as I just go K to 5, but even in 5th grade, they start getting their, they can get their Tdaps, their meningitis, and their HPV, and it seems like, the Tdap and the HPV, no problem.
Right.
But then it comes when it comes to the HPV, I'm not seeing it, so,
Well, there's also a discrepancy in the state because it wants the first dose of HPV by 7th grade and then 2 doses during the 8th grade. Well, the vaccine is now only a 2-dose vaccine. So I don't know if that skewed some of their statistics because that 3rd dose was left blank because they're not getting it. And that dropped the numbers when the
So
state
they
was
haven't
looking at
updated,
it.
they haven't probably updated
Right.
what they're collecting,
And these
which could,
vaccines, the doses change all the time depending on what the research says. So,
And I wonder, the rotavirus, that's like a recommend, that was kind of if you're traveling,
yeah, that's
but now,
recommended, so
Yeah.
not, not mandated for, you know, entrance into kindergarten.
Yeah,
It's
but that
just-
would still bring your numbers down, or not?
No,
No.
no, because it's not
It's-
mandated.
No,
Okay.
it's mandated if you're in-home childcare or, a DHS center-based care, but otherwise, it's not required.
Do you do, and maybe you don't know, again, you're elementary, but that vaccinate before you graduate program
They do it in the upper grades,
where they'll come
so
in,
in high school.
and maybe that's where they make up the difference, cause they
Yeah.
actually come in and the parents don't have to get them to their pediatrician,
Yeah.
they just have to sign off on
And they
it.
work with their schedules, so I
Yes.
don't have to miss football practice
Right.
because mom made a stupid appointment or
Right.
something,
You got it, sometimes that's what it is,
I know.
combination of those things, so that's a great program, that
Yeah.
vaccinate before you graduate, cause then they're
Right.
prepared to go off to college or.
Do they do any, on-site, I'm assuming maybe in the high school, flu vaccine?
We do flu throughout the district.
Okay,
Mhm.
but they don't do the other vaccines?
Well, they do have the vaccinate before you graduate program.
Okay.
So, and I don't know exactly when they go in or how they do that.
Okay.
Is the vaccinate before you, is there a similar version for younger grades where they will come to the school to do?
No, because you need parent, you know, permission, you need the parent, yeah,
Right.
you need the parent there, yeah.
Do they come for the graduate thing too? Or is that only for kids? who are
I
18?
think that those kids are, you know, much older,
Okay.
so they don't have to have, you know, some of them are 17, 18 years
Yeah.
old, so they don't need parent permission.
Is it 18, they don't need permission? Or like it's
So,
Yeah, it's at 18.
18.
Just to tell parents, today your child is 17 and they can't sign for anything. Midnight, the fairy comes and dusts them, and now they're all knowledgeable and can answer any question about their medical history. And the parents were like, yeah, I mean, exactly, that's, you know, like they're 18, but they're like 17 really, you know, or 15. I have a 15-year-old who's more with it than the 18-year-old. But the law is the law, unfortunately, in some instances.
So what, all right, we're doing good on our time. What I wanted to do was, I just wanted to do a little round table in case anyone has anything on their mind they want to say, or any updates. Sherry?
Okay.
You're good, because you already
I
said.
have that for you, Maria.
Jackie, I had someone before you this time.
Right, no.
Lydia, you always have some good data.
Well, you had asked me to share information about our displaced population, which
Yes,
I'm
I
happy
did.
to do. I just pulled some numbers. As I mentioned at the last meeting, the number of, or the one before last, I suppose, the number of families who are in the North Kingstown School Department who are displaced is higher than ever this year, on the heels of last year, which was also much higher than the year before. For those of you who don't know, if a family's, the law is called McKinney-Vento that protects displaced families in the Department of Education. It's a federal law. It defines homelessness in education differently than housing and urban development does. So families who are doubled up, as well as those who are in shelters or hotels, all are considered homeless by the Department of Ed, and there's all sorts of federal protections for them. So my role in the school department is to help make sure that those families have their rights protected. And so I reach out to determine whether or not the families meet the criteria for homelessness, but then also provide support resources. And when I was looking today, so right now, this year I should say, so far we've had 65 youth. That's including under 5, so it's, you know, birth to 18 kids who I've been working with who are currently displaced this year. And then under the law, that McKinney-Vento law, if a family was homeless at all this year, they also receive benefits for the rest of this year. So this year we have 15 youth who have moved into permanent housing from a homeless situation into North Kingstown. So if we add those groups together of that vulnerable age, it's 80 youth. And that's 80 youth, but 45 families. So it's a big number. It's a lot of young people. When we think about health, the impact of homelessness on mental health is huge, but also it impacts sleep, it impacts diet. We have right now, this year we've had, let's see, 7 families with 12, representing 12 kids who are living in hotels. Some of them are in hotels for over a year. Not all of them are in extended stay style hotels that have kitchen facilities. Some are in just regular hotels with a sink and a toilet and a bed. So if you think about the kinds of food that these kids are putting into their bodies because of the ease of storing and preparing them, there's a lot of, it's not just that it's hard to work and play, but it's also hard to meet your basic bodily needs in terms of sleeping and eating and so forth. So,
One thing, I was just gonna say that you taught me after 2 meetings ago when we were talking about connectivity of the
Yeah.
food for these families, because I was like, oh, we can do this, but then you said, well, the hotels are not in North Kingstown.
yeah, a lot.
So I went, oh, there goes our, just another
Yeah, we
wall.
have
Yes.
families all over.
So one thing I wanna just mention here
Yeah.
is this is all super important, obviously.
Yeah,
Is this
yeah.
on the agenda though? Because for the Open Meetings Act, the roundtable?
Well, this is, well,
I was just reporting out,
Y-
but that's
yes.
part of the roundtable, but am I saying too
should
much?
it say roundtable on the
I
agenda?
think it should,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Well,
Oh,
well, you got it.
Specifically what it is, it can't just say roundtable.
Okay, you can
Yeah.
say what?
You have to say
Yeah.
specifically what you're gonna be discussing.
oh,
Okay.
Yeah.
so I was over-prepared for the roundtable, so that was me getting carried away. So, but anyway, so that's a little bit of snapshot, and I'm talking about it partly because it's so everyday, and I'm always happy to talk with anybody who has might have questions about this, or if you want to put it on the agenda for a future meeting, I'm happy to share in more detail at that point as well, so no worries.
Sorry, I got you.
Yeah,
That's okay.
it's okay, it's okay.
Yes. Debbie?
No,
So,
I,
yeah.
I'm just excited to see signage for the vaping, but the entryways, the bathrooms, that would be great.
Yes, and I'm excited about meeting Kayla too. And I knew she was new, but it sounds like we have the resources. And for all I know, they're up and posted.
Yeah.
Nope.
I don't have anything
Yeah.
either. Meeting adjourned.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
thank you.